What you're looking at might be the greatest lens ever designed for any camera in the history of the world. This is the 14-42 kit lens from Panasonic, f3.5 to 5.6, perfect for low, actually it's terrible. Or is it? Let's find out. Howdy folks, this is Shane. Welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoyed that little intro. I see so many people give this lens crap online, and I thought, you know what, being that I actually have one and I'm a YouTuber, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna make a little video and test it out and see if it's justified, the criticism that is, or whether or not it's actually kind of cool. This is one of those particular lenses that might not give you any creative freedom at all, being that you can only really use it under certain circumstances. In a well-lit room with proper studio lighting, it will work fine. Outdoors, it will also work fine. There's definitely a couple of things though about this lens that I really like, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what I do like about this lens before I go into some of the criticisms about it. Let's get into it. Now, the first thing you want to do with this particular lens is notice this. Take it off and throw it away, and it will reduce the size of the lens about 40%, at least in terms of its length, which is great. And that's one of the really cool things about this particular lens is its size. If you want a really light rig for taking around and traveling and all that kind of stuff, this G85 with this particular lens would be a great option. It's nice and small. You get that in-body image stabilization as well as lens stabilization. So it works extremely well, especially if you're a vlogger. We're going to test out some different footage in some different scenarios as well, and I'll probably do some voiceover as we go. I thought where we'd start with this particular video is to see how it works for someone who might be vlogging, holding the camera like this, or just walking with it like that as well. We'll test out a few different ways down the beach, so let's get into it. Alright, over to my sexy microphone now, and what you're about to see is me literally just walking along the sand. I do have the in-body stabilization active, as you can probably tell, and it looks really smooth. I'm not doing anything to try to make it smoother in terms of my walking style. I'm walking as I would normally. This lens is maybe the unsung hero for people who do vlogs, who don't mind the background not being so blurred out. I think this looks pretty smooth. I'm literally just extending my arm and trying to make sure that the focus point is always on my face, which it almost is. So, looks pretty cool. Let me know what you think. So in terms of getting that beautiful bokeh, the 14-42 is spectacularly not very good. But I managed to get it on a couple of shots. What I'm going to show you now is two almost identical shots. One was at 14mm, closer to the subject, closer to the thing in the foreground, which is like a stick on the beach. And the other one was a few steps back, zoomed all the way in. And sometimes that's a little bit of a trick to getting that bokeh effect. Let's see if it makes any difference. So this first shot is at 14mm, and I'm up really close to the stick in the foreground. As you can see, there's a little bit of background blur, not a lot, but it still looks like a pretty decent shot. And now I'm all the way in at 42mm, and I just took about 4 or 5 steps back, so I guess here I'm trying to force the bokeh effect just that little bit more. If you skip back between this shot and the last, there's not a whole lot of difference, but let me know your thoughts. Here's a couple of more shots going for the bokeh effect. Here's one of my favorite shots of the day of just some grass coming up along the side of this particular fence. I think the background blur looks great, as well as on this flower. Check it out, I think I really nailed it, but I'm up super close to the flowers. I think that's the trick. So in terms of the bokeh effect, you can get a little bit, but don't expect miracles out of this particular lens. It's not that kind of lens, but I'm going to tell you another positive about it, and I think this is maybe where it shines, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, is in terms of its autofocus performance, it's actually pretty good. I've tried it in a couple of different modes, and I like it in 2 modes in particular. Now, the one that I'm using on my GH5 is the same one that I use on my G85 with this particular lens, or any particular lens, is the one spot. So you bring up that little square, you put it over your face on the screen, and you're good to go. That particular mode also works really well with this, but I also found that 49 works well as well, which is one of those modes that I kind of avoided But for some reason, going between the foreground and the background, say like the beach shot, for example, you seem to get pretty responsive autofocus, which is something I didn't expect at all. Alright, I'm back with a little bit more sexy voiceover. So this particular flower is the same one you saw before, except now we're gonna see if it can autofocus on one that's a little bit closer, as well as a slight zoom in, as you just saw, and it works. Alright, I thought I'd do the log test. This is something that you just have to do. Go between the foreground and the background, and I chose this because it's super messy. And I thought, you know what, let's just see what it actually focuses on, and it seems to work pretty well. Here's another one. This is the 49 mode. So I'm going to go between the foreground and something about 1 meter or 3 feet back from the foreground here. I'm up quite close to this tree as well, so just keep that in mind. This shot took a little while to get it, but it did get it, so there you go. For this particular test, I'm using pinpoint mode. Now this doesn't work perfectly, but it works pretty well. You can kind of see it pulse a little bit. There's a lot going on in this scene in the foreground and in the background, and I thought this would be a really good test just to sort of see if it could grab focus on whatever I pointed at. And it's doing an okay job. I'm not going to say it's doing a great job. It's doing an okay job. It's taking a little while on some of these shots. And now we're zoomed in all of the way just to sort of see what happens in terms of its autofocus. As you can see, it took a little while, but it worked on that particular stump. And it's still kind of taking a little while, but it is going back and forth, which is great. Not a whole lot of pulsing either. This is 49 mode again, and I'm assisting focus by pushing the shutter down halfway. I'm actually really close to that branch in the foreground as well. It might not look it, but I'm really close to it, and as you can see, it's kind of struggling a little bit coming up. This is using one spot autofocus as well, going from the seaweed in the foreground to the beach, not doing anything else. Here's a similar shot to before. Now what you're going to see me do is go from the flowers to try to get the edge of the fence in focus. It didn't do it. The focus didn't move at all in autofocus mode, which was interesting. But what you'll also see is when I pan down to get the flowers in the background in focus, it does it flawlessly. Except it doesn't work when I come back, so I still feel like one spot autofocus or even pinpoint mode might be the best all-round autofocus for this lens. Back to pinpoint mode, and I'm going to zoom in and out and try to capture focus on different branches. Now at the start this worked really well, but it did struggle, as you'll see coming up. I even pressed the shutter in halfway to try to grab focus, but it didn't work either. If you're on manual mode though, it won't be a problem. Now, is the autofocus performance perfect on this lens? Absolutely not. I still found like I had to half press the shutter for it to become responsive, but that's more of an inherent issue with the camera and it's autofocus than anything else. But if you're on a non-moving subject and you want to sort of pan or move between something in the foreground, something in the background, odds are it's going to work most of the time, not all of the time, but if you see that it's a little bit sluggish, half push the shutter and bang, it should lock on nice and simple. So for those wondering why I ended up with one of these lenses, I actually got it for free. It was part of this G85 kit. I got a deal where I bought the camera body, they gave me a free lens and a free battery. So I didn't say no. There was no other option for a lens. It was either the 14 to 42 or nothing at all, so I chose the lens. One of the really great things about this particular lens is the fact that it doesn't have a huge zoom range. It means you can basically do a full zoom in or out with just one turn. You don't have to sort of move your hand, reposition it, and then turn it a second time to get to where you need to be. I'll show you a couple of zoom in and out so you can see how well it works.
While it looks like I'm getting wet right now, I'm not. I'm several feet back from the actual water's edge, and I'm zoomed all the way in on this jellyfish. Pretty tasty stuff, huh? Yum.
So just to recap, if you're a vlogger, for example, and you're looking for something that has good stabilization and a wide angle, this isn't a bad choice at all. Will you get the bokeh effect that everybody seems to love? Probably not. It can kind of be achieved, but it's not great. So don't buy it for that. But just for walking around and having something light and compact, this would be a great rig to travel with as well. This lens works fine for photos too. I've used it overseas and I can't complain about it. I think it's pretty good. Do I like it as much as my 12-60 kit lens? I don't, but for what it is, the fact that it's nice and small, I've used this on so many videos on my other YouTube channel over the last 12 months, and it does a really great job, especially if you're wanting more of a wide angle lens. One of the downsides of this particular lens is it feels kind of cheap to use, but it's not a deal breaker. So odds are if you're watching this video, you already own this lens and you just wanted to have a bit of a laugh or just see a review on this lens that you never use. Or the other alternative is you're looking to buy some sort of G85 pack or G7. It might come with this lens and you're wondering if it's any good. So is it enough to get you started? Absolutely. If you're shooting in a well-lit room like I do in my studio room next door, or even in here, it would work fine as well. All the footage that you saw outdoors was shot with this in Cine D profile with the G85. So if you're buying a G7 or a GH5, this lens would work fine, but on a GH5, I'd probably want to get a little bit of a better lens. But for what it is, it does well. For a vlogger, it would be great. It takes decent photos as well. And what can I tell you? I've used it on enough videos now to know that it does the job under good lighting conditions. Is this the perfect lens for low light photography or videography? Absolutely not, but I thought that would be pretty clear. So for those who don't know a lot about photography, if you're looking for that background blue, you want the lowest f-stop number you can find. The actual lens I've got on here is the 25mm 1.7. I did a review of that as well. That's a great lens for getting that effect. If you haven't seen that video, I'll pop it up in the cards and you can check that out as well. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell if you own this lens. Let me know what you think of it as well. Odds are it's going to get a bit of a mixed response in the comment sections. I'm sure some people will love it, some people won't, but let me know why. And all the comments do help other people as well, so don't forget to leave some. Thanks again for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.